Our film starts with a guy abusing and beating up a woman in an alley. When it looks like he's about to sexually assault her, a vampire comes along and rips his face off before beating him against a wall. Good old B-movie gore. The vampire then tells the victim that it's okay and asks if it's okay to take her to a safe place. The girl doesn't actually answer the question and instead asks if she could be taught how to rip people's faces off. Next, we're at a bar called the Smiling Moose, where some guys are playing poker and one guy wins an invitation to a place called the Bathory House in a hand which him and his friends are excited about. Bathory House is apparently a brothel, and the guy of the couple he won the tickets for wants a threesome. The guy who won the hand goes to another guy to tell him they're going to the brothel, which he turns down. I think the poker guy's name is John, but it's hard to hear what's being said with the generic background music overtaking the dialogue. Back at the brothel, the vampire girl is bathing and prepping the woman she saved to, I guess, pimp her out. Interesting rescue. In the car with the horny crew on the way to the brothel, they all decide to talk about the guy who didn't show up and how he's stuck on his girlfriend who left him. When they arrive at the brothel, they aren't very impressed at first, and all we're treated with as viewers is apparently someone testing a drum kit and using it as background music.
Courtesans. Whatever, just say yes.
Relax, Aaron. No one will be prettier than me, right?
Eventually, the madam shows up and introduces all the girls to the people waiting in the lobby. John decides at the last second that he needs to leave and gives the couple he brought cab money for after. John heads back to the bar where the sad guy is still there, but at the same time we see that back at the brothel all the women have fanged out and fed on the patrons. We then find out through John's conversations with the other guy that the victim of the assault, who now works at the brothel, is the other guy's ex who left him. What a coincidence, and how come the other two didn't recognize her? The other guy gets all loud and belligerent when he finds out what happened to his ex and is now hell-bent on getting her back because nothing says I need my ex back right now like finding out she's a hoe, right guys? Anyway, another guy who overhears the conversation walks up to them and almost sort of tells them they're in danger, but never actually gets to the point. He seems to get annoyed that the guys aren't listening to him, but it would help if he would spit out what he's trying to say instead of being cryptic about it. He eventually tells the two to meet him in the parking lot if they want to live. Back at the brothel, new girl Teresa apparently did feed, so the madam allows her to feed from her wrist, but is told she needs to get used to feeding herself, as feeding from vampires isn't good for the vampire being fed on. Back with John and his buddy, the guy from the bar, Tom, takes them to see a guy named Sheridan. Again, they all have a cryptic conversation where they never actually tell John and the other guy what's going on, and they pull out guns to convince the two to go along with their plan. When they agree, Sheridan then gives them guns that totally don't look plastic at all, I swear. As they head out, they're told it's about an hour until sunrise, which works as long as you ignore the light coming from the blinds. This scene goes on for what feels like forever, but the only important thing we get out of this is the other guy's name is Seth, and Seth and John are told to bring symbols of their faith along for the trip. Eventually, the crew get to the brothel where some unnamed woman kills the doorman. They go from room to room until they eventually find Teresa sleeping in a bed with the madam. They tell the madam she broke some type of treaty and leave with Teresa, burning the madam with a cross on the way out. The madam angrily storms into the other room and seemingly fries one of the girls in the sunlight while questioning the other. From here, we get multiple scenes of Seth being really annoying. He's very overprotective and gets cranky about anyone hurting Teresa, with Sheridan correctly pointing out that she left him, so clearly he has no place being as pushy as he is, and that she had to want to become a vampire for it to happen. Seth eventually is allowed to inject Teresa with holy water. Back at the brothel, the madam whips the girl who saved Teresa before planning revenge on Sheridan. Eventually, after more conversations that go nowhere other than John finally remembering he left two friends there earlier in the movie, the vampires show up and kill Tom and try to force John into giving Teresa's location. Back with Teresa and Seth, she continues to remind him they broke up and she was where she wanted to be. The vampires then retrieve Teresa with the Asian one killing John on the way out. Back at the brothel, the madam explains to Teresa what the treaty was, as they were only supposed to feed on outsiders, and turning her broke that. They then take her downstairs where the girl who turned her was apparently being held. They then show her another girl named Jacqueline who is decayed looking. She's apparently on punishment for breaking the treaty. We then get more talking as we then get a flashback where the madam's maker Carmela leaves the house to her before killing herself. At least I think she kills herself. You see a hand stabbing, but you don't see whose. Then back in the present, we see Elizabeth bite Teresa. This then goes to a fight scene Royal Rumble style where people we've not seen at all up to this point end up getting killed or bitten before Sheridan is then fed on by the vampires, whose clothes apparently fall off as they're feeding. Wait, I think that might have been a flashback because we are all of a sudden back at Sheridan's and they're having their 100th bland conversation. This film's ADD is kicking in as we now go to Teresa feeding on Elizabeth, I guess, to return her. The vampire killer crew are now cranky about John being dead. Not so much Tom, who Sheridan basically said they were going to kill anyway for no reason at all, by the way. They continue to blame Seth for the situation when they literally had no reason to not just let him head to the brothel and die. The group then heads back to the brothel where more unnamed random people fight and die while Seth goes looking for Teresa. He eventually finds her feeding on some guy. Meanwhile, downstairs, the named vampires are both killed as the Asian one drinks blood tainted with holy water, and the one who originally saved Teresa is killed by Sheridan carving a cross on his hand and putting it on her forehead. Back with Seth, Teresa begs Elizabeth not to kill him. Before she can bite him, Teresa stops her, and then Seth shoots her. Then they talk it out some more before Elizabeth rips Seth's throat and heart out. There's then lots of random female screaming. I promise you I'm not being lazy. This film is just a lot of super random scenes sandwiched in between really dull conversations. Anyway, Elizabeth tries to bite Seth, who then defends himself with the picture of him and Teresa, which is his faith object. Elizabeth then gives a dying speech similar to the one she got from her maker before Teresa shoots whatever was on the mantle in the room, leading to Elizabeth's death. The film ends with Teresa, who is the newest vampire, somehow now being in charge of the brothel, and her feeding Seth to the girl in the basement, with the final scene being her introducing some men to a really not very impressive roster of ladies.